Hello.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mark Montini. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining us. It is 2:58, so we will get started in about 2 minutes. Jump in. Thank you all so much for joining us today. As you probably saw in the announcements around this, a new rhythm, if you will, for the marketing department this year is to have a webinar the second Tuesday of every month at 3 p.m. So just like our weekly open line calls, it'll be easy for you to get into a rhythm and plan it into your schedule. This month's webinar is focusing on building relationships with realtors, restorators, and remodelers. And continuing on the theme that we hit at convention, rather than spend our time introducing a system or a process for you to follow, it's my real sincere belief that we have everything we need to go out into the field and begin building these relationships. So what we focus this webinar on is real in the field experience, both from a franchisee perspective and from our partner perspective, realtors, restorators, and remodelers, to give us some tips and some ideas on how we can more effectively leverage the work that we're doing, getting out on the ground, meeting with realtors, restorators, and or remodelers. Now, I'll start with a little bit of bad news, and that is an understanding of why this is where we decided to start these webinars this year. If you remember back at convention, I think everyone left convention aligned around the fact that our top priority this year, if not our top priority, one of our top 3 priorities as a network, was to really reinvigorate our local marketing efforts, whether that be business to business to consumer, customer referrals, business referrals, or any other of the local tactics that we use. And I wanted to give you just a quick check-in on how we're doing as a network year to date versus last year on achieving that goal. So far, year to date, we've had a 1 3/4% increase in the number of leads that have been entered into InspireNet from local marketing activities. We've had a 0.7% year-to-date increase in the number of appointments generated by local marketing activities. And we've had a 2.4% year-to-date increase in the number of proposals generated by local marketing activities. And when you look at those numbers, they certainly don't align with the priority that we set at our annual meeting in January with regard to reinvigorating our local marketing. Now, the caveat here, of course, is we all know it takes a while for the work that we do locally to begin to bear fruit. So I fully do expect these numbers to increase. But from a leadership role in the marketing department, it's very hard for me to look at these numbers and not say we need to do more. We need to put a greater emphasis on local marketing. And that's really what drove the topic for this month's webinar. Now, the reason these numbers are so important is because if we look at numbers 4 and 5, what you begin to see is that there is tremendous opportunity if we can get numbers 1, 2, and 3 increasing like we are, increasing leads and appointments and proposals on our digital marketing, because the local marketing has a 52.3% close rate and a $5,607.55 average job size this year, which is just a little bit better close rate than we had during the same period last year and just a little bit smaller job size. But the reality is when we look at our businesses individually and when we look at our brand collectively, if we can, over the next 3, 6, 9 months, turn our leads, appointment, and proposal trend the other way, where we begin to grow more quickly, the economic opportunity for each of you, not only to grow your business, but to grow your business profitably is significant when you look at a 52.3% close rate and a $5,600 average job size. So that's the driver of why we've decided to start this new monthly webinar series with the discussion about building relationships with realtors, restorators, and remodelers. So I want to run through real quickly who you're going to be hearing from today. So the first person that you'll hear from, or I should say one of the people that you'll hear from, is John Henson. You all know John Henson. He's the owner of our franchise in Charlotte, North Carolina. A couple things you may not know about John is that in 2018, John's business generated $1,267,199 in revenue from local marketing. And as you saw in the announcement, John in January of this year is the #2 ranked franchisee in the network when it comes to appointments generated through B2B2C, business to business to consumer marketing. And when I first met John, probably 7 or 8 years ago now, the thing that I remember most is that most of the franchisees considered him the mayor of his market. So if you spend any time in John's market or you hear John talk about his market, he's done such a great job building relationships and building his brand locally that he is lovingly referred to internally and externally as the mayor of his market. So we're going to leverage John's wisdom from an insider's perspective, if you will, or a franchisee's perspective on how to build relationships to generate numbers like these in your business. The second guest is Amy Frihdi. Amy is a 20-plus years of experience in the real estate industry and describes herself as a realtor, renovator, and most appropriately, a relationship builder. She'll tell you, and I'm sure you'll hear it come through in the discussion, that she really has focused much of her career on how to build relationships, both in the real estate industry and outside the real estate industry. So in my mind, I figured who better to have on this particular webinar to talk about this from a realtor's perspective. And then the third guest that we were supposed to have was Steven Simpson from Parkview Construction and Restoration. Had 32 years in restoration and remodeling and 10 to 15 flooring referrals per year when he looked at his business. So we talked about his business, and he said that he refers about 10 to 15 flooring jobs every year just from his relatively small business. We did run into a bit of a problem because of the business that Steven is in, the restoration business, and he got called out on an appointment this afternoon. I'm going to be paying a little attention to my phone because if he can finish up that, then he's going to jump on with us. But if not, we'll have him back on a future one, or I'll just record one and send it out to everybody. So for today, we have John and we have Amy to talk very briefly about how do we build relationships. And I thought the way that we would go through this is by really asking 5 simple and fundamental questions. And John, I'll go ahead and give you the opportunity to answer each of these questions first. And then Amy, you can give your answer. And then I'd love for the two of you perhaps to have a little dialogue around it, franchisee to realtor and or franchisee to renovator, depending on which hat Amy's going to be wearing at the time. For those of you that are on the webinar, if you do have questions, please post them in the chat box and we will get to them at the very end of the webinar. So let's start with the very first question, and we're going to start at the beginning. So Amy, this question would be for you, but I'm going to let John answer it first. John, when we're looking at a realtor in this particular case, how do we get to a realtor? We hear the stories all the time that they go in and they all of a sudden are hit with a gatekeeper. So what is the secret, John, from your perspective to getting through the gatekeeper and actually getting to the realtor or the realtors, getting to the key decision makers at the restoration company, getting to the business owner in the remodeling company? What's the key? You're muted, John. No, still muted. I'm going to unmute you, or try anyway.
That should be okay. I'm on the phone.
There you go. Now you're good.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I probably did that. Who the hell knows? Well, a couple of things I do, and no offense, Amy, I don't go right for you. I usually try to do an end around with the gatekeeper, or I smooth her completely. But I'll go right to, I'll find the broker, whoever's in charge, the sales manager or the owner of the real estate agency, and try to contact them directly and get a meeting, one of your what do you do, a monthly sales meeting, weekly sales meeting, and try to get in there to find out what I can do for you, not what you can do for me, and start the dialogue that way. Also, another tactic is, and I'll be going to this next week, is there's a local, well, the county has a board of realtors, Brunswick County Association of Realtors, and I am an associate member since I'm not a realtor. I stay in my lane and let you stay in yours. And so I'll go to those after hours or whatever the meetings might have. I'm not sure what next Tuesday's is, but that's how I do that. I do the same thing with renovators, and I do the same thing with builders. I'm going to a builders meeting tonight. So I try to if I get to know you socially first, you're less likely to slam the door in my face.
So Amy, in the real estate world, how do we get to the realtor or the leader of an office or one of the leaders of an office, and how do we get around the doorkeeper, the gatekeeper?
Sure. John, no offense taken by your end run either. I totally get it. You know, I think one of the most important pieces is getting to know me and just getting in front of me. That repetitive, like, hey, I keep seeing this guy everywhere. And so coming to open houses is a great way. Like, realtors spend their weekends running open houses. I think just showing up and learning the inventory and learning the clientele and kind of what neighborhoods and things that realtors are working in. So you can connect with them on that level and understand, like, hey, I know you're selling a lot of, you know, classic homes with parquet flooring. We do great work with restoring that, or whatever it is. Being able to really talk the talk with the realtor in their specific market or whatever market it is you're trying to tap into. But I think to John's other point, networking socially, whether it's through a formalized networking group or one of these, you know, realtor meetup type situations, we network basically for a living. So we're around, we're out, we're having cocktails, we're having morning coffees, you know, come hang out with us, get to know us, let us get to know you. I think that's kind of the initial relationship building piece rather than just a cold call or a cold email.
So let me build on that just a little bit before we move on to the second question. So traditionally, we have, and I don't think it's incorrect, but it may not be the best practice. We have said, you know, every week, stop by the realtor office, bring a gift to the person at the front desk, basically let her or him understand that you're going to be there every week until you get that opportunity. What I hear from both of you is that while that certainly works, it's probably more effective to do it outside of the business realm and really focus on socializing and getting to know the realtors beyond what they do in the office. I love the idea, Amy, of going to the open houses. Not only because you get to meet the realtor, but you also get to see opportunities to say, hey, I can help you add $10,000 to the value of this house. So in kind of your final answers to this question, and Amy, I'll start with you. Anything you want to add to that as to how we might, as a network, want to change that approach from always going to the business, trying to get through the gatekeeper, to actually becoming more in the social scene with the realtors?
This may come as a surprise, but if you're not already on social media, and by that I mean Facebook and Instagram, you need to get on. That's where some really savvy realtors are investing a lot of time and energy. That's where a lot of home buyers are. The millennial kind of generation, which is much larger than we think, is in fact the largest chunk of home buyers we have right now. And they live on Instagram, and it's your work is so visual that I think not only posting your own stuff so we can see, oh my God, this amazing floor you did, but also direct messaging me and, you know, connecting in that way about, hey, I saw that house you were at this weekend. It looks amazing. Just little one-liners that take no time at all, build those relationships in ways you wouldn't imagine. I found painters that way, car detailers that way. You know, it's an up and coming thing that a lot of people are afraid of, but I would not hesitate to say, get on social media and start reaching out to people to make connections.
Good. John, you want to put a bow around this one?
No, well, if I'm not texting them, I'm doing an instant message with them. I've got pretty much everybody in my territory that I have them in my system somehow. So yeah, social media is real big. Now I've got a few on Instagram, which is a little bit harder for me to navigate, but anyway. You can tell I'm not as young as you, huh, Amy? But anyway, social media, just like a lot of them like texting too. The quick business is done in a text. For the most part, and I don't know how you are, Amy, but we get down, cut to the chase, short messages and stuff instead of long dialogues. You're doing a long dialogue with the customer that you're trying to either sell a house or buy a house from. You just want me to be short, simple, and to the point.
It's a great transition, John, to the next question. So we get through, whether it's via text message, whether it's via social media, whether it's at an open house, whether it's at a networking event outside of a home. What do we say to you, Amy? So when we want to start the relationship, let's just say generally it's cold. We've never talked with you before. You don't know who we are. We've never shaken hands. What is it that we need to say to you to get your attention and have you in a position to even be willing to have the conversation with us?
So I think my big theme when it comes to relationship building is authenticity. Don't kind of come in posturing about, I did a $1 billion house, I have a lot of sales. Like, just be your real self and talk to me about the value you'll bring, not to me as much, but to my clients and my customers and my home buyers. I want to know that you are trustworthy, that you are responsive, that you're on time, all those pieces. Hopefully you do good work too, but those other things are really at the forefront for me in terms of initiating that relationship. And then I can dig deeper and see examples of your work. But for me, it's really the trust and the authenticity.
Good. John, what about you? What do we say? What do you say to a realtor the first time you meet them, whether it's via text message or in person?
Well, really, the first thing I ask them is what can I do for you, or what do you need me to do for you? And then offer up some services that maybe other people aren't helping them with, or even or something they didn't think of. One of the things I do for a lot of my realtors now is I will give them just a free estimate on what it takes. Let's say you have a house that you're selling a house, Amy, and it's going to need some refreshing. And that might be a part of the negotiation cost at the end. Well, I can give her an idea of what it would take to replace the carpet or refinish the floors, or if something has to be replaced, at least I can give them a budget number. And that can work both ways. Amy might bring me in if she's the seller's realtor and to look at that house to see what we can do with what's there in terms of budgeting replacement or budgeting repair. So it's what I can do for them, not necessarily sell them, but a service I can perform for them to help them sell the home or buy the home. That's the first thing I try to do. Once they learn about me, they'll find out the rest of, let's say, my portfolio. And that's actually just happened with a new realtor to the area last week.
Tell us about that. I was going to say, John, tell us about that, because I wanted to move it to the next step, practical. So tell us about that happened last week. A realtor that's actually only moved back to the area. Used to be in the 2006, 2007, before kind of the bottom fell out, was one of the heavy hitters in the region. She's left and she's come back, and now she didn't really know. Well, she didn't know me before. Now she is learning. She learned about me and connected with me, and she's got a little team together. And we had a meeting with her team. She wanted to find out what services I can do for her. And it's not something that, well, number one, the person she worked with 10 years ago isn't around anymore. And number two, I have a much broader scope than that company did. So again, it was what I can do to help her either buy a house or sell a house for her client. So that's how we started positioning all that. We've already gotten a couple of referrals, and we'll see where they land. Awesome. In a week, you've gotten a couple of referrals.
Yes.
Geez, you're going to make me take back what I said earlier, that it takes a while for this to get traction, John.
Well, it does a little bit, because her license did go to a company that I've been worked with before. She was in the area before, so she had a reputation that was pretty good. So it's kind of maybe a little bit of the stars align. Mars and Venus are actually talking to each other. So who knows?
Yeah.
Some things
So,
work
Amy,
quick, some things don't.
Amy, there are people on this call who hopefully will end the webinar and immediately jump on their phone to text message, jump on Instagram, jump on LinkedIn. Maybe they'll even drive across and go knock on a door or go to a social event tonight. To make this very, very practical for them, and I'll give you a couple seconds to think through this, and John, I'm going to ask you the same thing. If you had to script them, give them the first 3 sentences, the first 2 sentences that they're going to say in that text message, on that direct message in social media, or in that conversation at the networking event, what would the words be?
That is a tough one. Something along the lines of, you know, I'd love to know how I can help your clients better understand the costs and the process associated with flooring. Just about educating the realtor and the client and what the value that you can bring to that situation.
Awesome. John, what would you say?
Well, hi, Amy. My name's John Henson. I own Floor Coverings International in Charlotte, North Carolina. I haven't met you before, and I have a pretty big bag, a pretty good portfolio of work, but what do you need from floor covering? What can I do to help you sell a house?
Perfect.
By the way, Amy,
practical.
I just found you online.
You did.
Well, yeah, I just found you on Facebook.
All right, I'm going to switch to the third question. And this one you guys have already talked a little bit about, but I want to put a spotlight on it. What shouldn't we say to you? So, you know, there are those things that we should say that hopefully start a relationship. There are also those things that the moment you hear them, you say, I got to get out of here as quick as I can, or I would never do business with this person. So give us some idea on what are the things that we should know, just stay away from them in the conversation, whether it be how you say them or specifically what you say to the realtor.
You want me first or her?
Yeah, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Well, first off, it's the toughest thing for any salesperson to do, whether it's the realtor or the flooring salesperson. Introduce yourself and shut up. What do you need from me, Amy? And listen. Let her ask the questions. If she wants to dive into my business, let her dive into it.
Amy, what would you add?
I have to agree. You can learn so much more by listening than by talking. If you're pretty savvy, you can pick up on little nuances that the realtor or the client may be saying. But as far as like screaming, exclamation point, do not say this, don't tell me you're the cheapest one around. I don't want to hear that. I mean, I have this saying in my head of a cheap tattoo ain't good and a good tattoo ain't cheap, right? Like that's how I feel kind of about flooring. Like I don't want to know that you're the cheapest. I want the best quality value situation. And by leading with I'm the cheapest, that's going to tell me that's all you've got going for you.
Let me dig into that a little bit more, Amy, because I've heard from a lot of franchisees that when you get in homes that the owner is just simply looking to maximize the value. They know they need new floors. They want the cheapest floor to put in the home so they can say it's new floors and add the $8,000 or the $12,000 to the price. What you just said to a certain extent contradicts that. And I don't disagree with what you just said, but speak a little bit deeper into that as to why would a realtor look at a flooring contractor different than we think they would if they're just looking for the cheapest way for their client to add $8,000 to the asking price?
I mean, so as someone who has hired flooring guys before, I can share horror stories of when I went with the cheapest guy and what happened, right? And I think it's almost the realtor's job to sell the person that they're referring as well. And so again, cheap isn't always good. And the difference in pricing at the end of the day, I mean, I don't know your business as well as you know your business, but we're not talking $500,000 difference between this wood floor and that wood floor guy. So I think being able to not justify, but explain why your service/product is maybe slightly more expensive than the competitor is the way to go. And you're always going to get the person that wants the cheapest. That's just the way it is. That's the nature of the game. I mean, we're facing that as realtors with some of these, you know, flat rate agencies as well. You get what you pay for.
Hey,
John,
Amy?
you haven't talked about price. Go ahead.
No, I'm not going to either. Amy, would it be helpful to you that to know that I'm part of a national buying group, and I can probably bring you a better value than most of your local retailers, just because of the way the 150 owners buy together and offer that
John,
service?
you sound like you've done this before.
Pardon me?
You sound like you've done this before.
A couple times this week.
It would definitely help me to understand why your pricing is different than someone else's. And yes, that is a value add for sure.
Awesome. So we've got the relationship started. Let's move on to the fourth question. And Amy, I'll let you start with this one. How should we work with you? So we've got the relationship started. Everything seems to go well. We didn't say we're the cheapest, so you actually want to have a conversation with us. How do we work with you? Do we call you every day and say, hey, do you got anybody that I can go? How do we keep the relationship strong with you, and what's the best way that we can continue to build and grow this relationship?
So it's kind of a cart before the horse situation for me. If I have referred you to someone, I need you to be on time, do a great job, be responsive, follow up, let me know how the job went, just stay in communication about that referral. But if we're still early stages and we're still building, you know, we're still in the dating phase, trying to get those referrals, I think, you know, messaging me, talking about a house, staying on my social media, a text message here and there, let's grab coffee and catch up. But there's a fine balance. Like, we're barraged with our own customer relationship management and how many people we need to contact every day. And you buzzing in our ear 7 days a week might come off as annoying. Once a week, check in, comment, kind of mix up the communication so that I don't expect, like, oh God, it's Thursday at 10, John's going to call me again, right? Like, just kind of stay in my sphere, pop into an open house if you know I'm working one. If we have a networking event in common, come say hi. Just make it organic and authentic, as opposed to the here's my sales funnel, who I have to call today situation.
Yeah, I like that. And you wove in there, and I'm going to put a spotlight on it, multiple different channels. So stop by the office one day, show up at an open house the next week, direct message you, comment on something on your social media, text message you, just find different ways, hit you up at a networking event. That's awesome. Lots of different ways so you can begin to build that relationship. John, how do you work with realtors?
Well, it's pretty much what she said, and it's how I work with about everybody. There are people, you get to know who wants to talk when. Do I want to see somebody every day? No. Do I want to communicate with somebody every day? No. So it's an individual relationship. Every single person is going to be different. So you know what? Now you've got to manage 10 relationships, 20 relationships, 30. It doesn't matter. You've got to manage them all a different way. Amy and I will hit off one way. We'll get to, maybe she's calling me. You have anything for me? Or have I missed anything? Whatever. I'll be on her radar as often as she wants me to be on her radar. It might be just a check-in text. You need me for anything? No, not right now, but call me later. She'll respond instead of no. It'll be not right now, but call me later. That's typically what happens.
John,
it's just everybody may manage differently.
John, you said earlier that you've got a pretty big list of all the realtors in your territory. About how many, when we talk about this ongoing relationship, whether it's social media messaging, whether it's commenting on posts, text messaging, phone calls, emailing, all of this, how big is the group of realtors that you specifically target? How many?
I was making a list. Right now, I have 13 realtors that are on my radar that I talk to or communicate with maybe once a week. And beyond that, I've got another 12. I've just been listing people that I might not talk to as often, but they'll call me for whatever reason. And a few of these are brokers in charge. So it's the way it works down in North Carolina. So they'd be the sales manager, and they might contact me and say, this realtor has an issue with the house. Can you help them out with something? And I told her or him to get on my radar about it. So it's more like juggling. It's a lot of juggling, and you've got to know where the balls are all the time. And Amy's ball is where Amy wants it to be, not where I want it to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
She'll tell me.
Amy,
she'll tell me how to communicate with her. She'll tell me how to communicate with her.
Amy, how do we ask for the opportunity? So, I mean, obviously we don't want to call up and just say, hey, Amy, you got any work for me? Walk us through, how do we ask in a way that isn't intrusive, is professional, but makes it very, very clear that, hey, we really would love an opportunity?
I think the easiest and most natural feeling away is to have some context around it. So, and this involves a little legwork, but let's say, that I listed a kind of beat up house, and you came to the open house last weekend and you saw the floors and you're like, I could do X, Y, and Z with those floors. Give me a call the next week and say, hey, I stopped by that house on Main Street, great bones, but I know the floors could probably, use a little life. Let's, can I help you out? Can I give you an estimate so that when you're talking to potential buyers, you can let them know about how much it might be, things like that. Just offering that education and that value to me consistently, and knowing my inventory and knowing my area, because, here in Greater Boston, we've got the suburbs, we've got downtown, we've got different types of needs, whether it's a high-rise condo or some sprawling colonial, and just being able to speak to that world.
Cool. I like it. All right. And then the last question, or I guess one of the last questions, because I know I'll have more, and this is specifically for you, Amy, and I know we've touched on it. And then John, I want you to layer in how you do it. We've talked about creating this win-win and, make sure that we're working on behalf of the realtor, not having the realtor work on behalf of us. But Amy, talk to us, if you want to add anything to what you've already said, about how we can best serve you. So a big part of our culture is service. A big part of our brand is service. We believe, and the data backs up, that we serve our customers better than any other flooring company that's out there. So how can we provide you with the same level of service to help you achieve your goals?
That's an easy one. Do you write by my clients? Be there when you say you're going to be there. Finish as close to on time as you can with as little disruption. There is nothing worse than referring a contractor to a client and then having that client call you and say, that guy that you told me to call for my painting job really screwed up. He was late. He was a no-show. He didn't tell. All that stuff reflects on me because I'm the one who gave that name. So again, be there when you say you're going to be there. A lot of times we've got, a house under contract. We've got small windows when we can get the buyer in there to do estimates and get contractors in. And we can't sit around all day waiting for somebody to show up, and it just really throws a wrench into the works if you are late. So live and die by your calendar and plan accordingly. One other little piece that I want to throw in that's related to something you just said is the service. I'm a big fan of giving back as well, and give back because you want to give back, but it goes a long way in terms of presenting your character to the world as well, right? So if there's a Habitat for Humanity house, or some kind of service project or some way that's a small job that you want to do on the weekend that you can give back through your industry and through your craft, to then not show off, but so that I feel, I go, oh my God, John spent Sunday doing the floors at this little, 4-H clubhouse or whatever it is, something like that. That's a connection for me. And I think for a lot of us who believe in giving back. So taking your industry and using it in a way that shows me you're doing good for the world, not just for my clients, is a big thing too. Is that too long,
John,
too much?
No, that's perfect. John, how do you've already talked about it a little bit, but let's put a kind of a bow around it and maybe come up with some key points. But how do you serve the realtors? What would they say about you and how you serve them?
Well, just what Amy said, I deliver what I promise, and I promise what I deliver. And I'll tell you up front, Amy, I will screw up from time to time, but I'll make sure I fix it for you. That's it. I'm only human. That's a great thing, the service part. Well, now I can boast a little. I'm a Rotarian. I have the seal on the front of my truck, and I'm involved in a lot of projects down here. There's a lot of need where I am. There's a lot of money, but as much money as there is, it's exactly polar opposite on the other side of the track. So we give back a lot in the community, for the kids especially. I'm big into kids. I'm a grandfather too, so I'm really big into kids. Yeah.
Awesome. So that is where we're going to get to questions. But as I get people the opportunity to submit their questions via chat, I've had to mute a number of people just from some background noise. So please submit your questions via chat. But to give you a few minutes to submit those questions, Amy and John, I'm going to ask you to maybe come up with one or two key takeaways since we've had this great conversation. It doesn't appear like Stephen's going to be able to make it, so we'll do another one in the near future with Stephen. So we can talk specifically about restoration and remodeling. But what are the one or two or maybe even three takeaways from this conversation that you would say owners of a flooring business should walk away from this webinar knowing these three things if they want to increase their ability to build relationships with, in this case, realtors? Amy, go ahead.
I will have to say authenticity wins with me all day long. I am who you see, and I expect that of the contractors I work with and that I refer to my clients. You know, like John said, you know, he's going to do what he says and he's going to tell you what he's going to do. It just, that open communication, that honesty, that transparency is super, super important in relationship building and becoming my, you know, ace in the hole floor guy that I'm going to refer to all my clients.
Right. John, what about you? What's the one or two or three takeaways?
Well, a big one, and I probably said it, but listening to Amy is how she wants it. It's learn how to listen and learn how to communicate. And you have to learn how to communicate and listen individually with everyone you talk to. Yeah. It's not a script. There is no script.
And John, I'm going to ask you one final question, and then if we don't have any questions coming in through chat, we will call it a day and send the recording out in a little bit. But the question for you is, you're an owner. We put those numbers up at the very beginning, 1.2 million plus doing this kind of stuff in your market. How much time do you devote weekly, after hours, during work hours? How much time every week do you focus on this sort of activity?
Wow. I don't know. I haven't done I do a time management matrix, and I haven't done one in a little bit. But I have a meeting tonight, so that's 3 hours. I had a meeting. I have a meeting on Thursday, so let's say 6 to 10 hours. But a phone call should be 5-10 minutes to chat. If it's more than that, you've got something really good going on. I got a text from 2 different renovators while we're on this. So, you know, 6 hours a week, I'd say is good.
Okay. So yeah, and that's about what we were trying to hit. Amy, a question came in for you actually, and John, you can feel free to chime in as well. You mentioned social media, Amy. Is LinkedIn a good source to be able to get to realtors?
It's not, this is, you know, disclaimer, my opinion. It's not a terrible place. It wouldn't be where I start. LinkedIn is a little more, you know, button up, white collar businessy and not so much interactive. LinkedIn tends to be where we do a lot of knowledge sharing about the market and housing trends and things like that. My go-to in terms of direct messaging and getting to know me and building that relationship is definitely Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I have to say that Facebook. I've got a couple realtors that I'm close with that might post a picture of a new listing. And that's Instagram. They really don't do that much on. LinkedIn, again, yeah, it's just like Amy said. That's for the business side of it. One other thing that she brought up is open houses. I know my people because I drive around. I'm going to appointments or I'm going to job sites, whatever. So I'll know if Amy has a couple of houses listed in a particular neighborhood or whatever. I see their signs. I know who's got what going on. In the conversation, hey, did that house on Fillmore Street, is it moving yet? It looks like a good value. I saw what it's listed for. Kind of make the, is there something I can do to help you? If it's been sitting for a while, Amy will know why. She needs help with something.
Awesome.
100%.
Cool. Well, Amy, John, I don't think we have any more questions. I'll give somebody about 5 more seconds as we wrap up. I'll give the reminder that this will be a monthly set occurrence. So we have a second Tuesday of every month at 3 p.m. We'll do another webinar. I think we're trying to book an exciting one. I don't want to overpromise. But if you read your Friday 5 email on this Friday, you will see a tremendous home show success story by the franchisees in the Cleveland market. The numbers will boggle your mind what they were able to do at their most recent home show. And so I've asked them if they would be open to coming on and doing the webinar to tell us what they did at that home show, and perhaps just as important, how they managed to work together to make it happen in their market. As we've grown as a brand, we're having more and more opportunities for co-op marketing. And so I'm not promising it yet because we haven't negotiated what their honorarium would be to be on the webinar. But as soon as I get a commitment from at least a handful of them that they can do it, we'll send that out. But my hope is that we'll focus on home shows and what the guys in Cleveland did to have mind-boggling success, which you'll read more about in the Friday 5 email. So Amy and John, thank you so much. Again, everyone, I apologize we didn't end up with our Restorator. I will find a way to get that information to you at some point in the very near future. But I think this is good, practical advice. Goes back to the focus that we had at convention. There's a lot of reasons we can look at local marketing and relationship building and say, I can't do it without this, that, and the other. But as Hubie Durst said in one of the breakouts, when somebody asked him, what do you need to do it? He said, a business card. And so I think we can take that away, Amy and John. Get the business card out, go be authentic, find your target of 20, 25, look to commit 30, 40 hours a week to building relationships and local marketing. Be that authentic and figure out how you can serve realtors, and it'll be the same for restorators, and it'll be the same for remodelers. And you'll be off to the races of changing those numbers that I started at the very beginning by increasing the percentage of your appointments that are coming from local relationships that have twice the close rate and the same average job size. So it's an opportunity to very easily double the revenue that you get from each appointment in your business. So thank you all for giving us some time on a Tuesday afternoon. Again, Amy, John, thank you so much for your time. And we will talk to you all on the next webinar next month or on our Thursday at 3 o'clock open call line. And look forward to talking with you then. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Nice to meet you, Amy. Bye-bye.